Sean todos bienvenidos a un nuevo video. El día de hoy tenemos para ti una compilación de repaso de 3 historias cortas. Este ejercicio pondrá a prueba tu comprensión ya que solo contarás con el apoyo de los subtítulos en inglés. Te invito a que nos digas en la sección de comentarios cuánto has logrado entender. Sin más preámbulo, comencemos.
This is the story of a boy from Henryville, Indiana. In 1895, when he was 6 years old, his father passed away. His mother had to start working in a tomato canning factory, leaving him in charge of cooking and taking care of his siblings. Life hit him hard at a very young age, and due to the difficult situation he faced, he had to work as a farmhand at the age of 10. When he was in the 6th grade, he dropped out of school, left home, and started working as a painter of horse carriages. At 16, he faked his age to enlist in the U.S. Army. After being honorably discharged a year later, he began working as a railroad worker and studied law at a nearby university, until he ruined his legal career by getting into a fight. He was forced to move back in with his mother and get a job selling life insurance. After a while, he was fired for not following orders. A few years later, he established a chemical lamp manufacturing company, only to discover that another company was already selling much better electric lamps. All this hardship in life, but this guy did not give up. He moved to work as a salesman in a tire company, but again, he lost his job when the company closed its manufacturing plant. At the age of 40, he met the general manager of an oil company, who asked him to run a service station. But the establishment had to close again as a result of the Great Depression. That same year, Shell Oil offered him a service station, rent-free, in exchange for paying the company a percentage of sales. He started operating the station and also began serving chicken dishes and other simple meals to people who stopped by for gas. A few years later, he resigned from his position at the station and opened his own restaurant. After achieving some success, he began advertising his food, but problems soon followed. A dispute with a local competitor ended in a fatal shooting in which one of his employees died. 4 years later, he bought a motel next to his chicken restaurant, hoping for better business. But it caught fire and burned to the ground along with his restaurant. However, this ambitious man rebuilt and ran a new motel with a larger restaurant, until World War II forced him to close again. When the war ended, he tried to sell his recipe to other restaurants, but it was rejected 1,009 times. Finally, in 1952, he managed to sell his secret recipe, Kentucky Fried Chicken, for the first time to one of the city's restaurants. It quickly became a success, and as a result, other establishments franchised the concept, paying him 4 cents per chicken. However, good times didn't last long. His own restaurant was affected when an interstate highway reduced customer traffic. He sold it and was left only with his savings and $105 a month from Social Security. So finally, he pursued his dream of franchising his chicken concept nationwide and traveled across the United States, looking for suitable establishments. He opened a new restaurant and a small corporate headquarters in 1959. He often slept in the back of his car, visited restaurants, offered to cook his chicken, and if the owners liked it, he negotiated a franchise right. In 1965, at the age of 75, he was just getting started. After years of rejection, failures, and misfortunes, Colonel Sanders' franchise became highly successful. KFC was one of the first fast food chains to expand globally, opening branches in Canada, UK, Mexico, and Jamaica by the mid-1960s. The Colonel remained the company's symbol after selling it. He traveled over 400,000 kilometers a year, visiting KFC restaurants and delighting customers around the world. At 90 years old, Colonel Sanders passed away. At that time, there were around 6,000 KFC locations in 48 different countries. In 2023, there were 29,900 KFC restaurants worldwide. If you feel overwhelmed by rejection or discouraged by setbacks, remember the Colonel's story. A man who dropped out, who failed, who suffered, and who even made poor decisions. However, his persistence made him the most famous cook in the world after reaching retirement age. Colonel Sanders, the creator of one of the largest fast food chains in the world, was many things, but above all, he was a great success story.
It was the 1880s in the United States. These were the times when European immigrants began arriving at the port of New York, and the foundations of a great city were being laid, from which the enormous skyscrapers would later rise. At that moment, something historic was about to happen. In a place not far from New York, in the city of Atlanta, Georgia, in 1886, the story of the most famous drink in the world was about to begin. A mysterious man on horseback arrived at one of the city's pharmacies. He was an old doctor who was looking to speak with the owner of the pharmacy, as he had an offer to make. The doctor claimed to have invented the formula for an energizing syrup made from sugars that could help patients with weakness, and he was looking to sell the recipe to the young John Pemberton, the pharmacy's owner. He presented his offer asking for $500, the equivalent of Pemberton's entire savings from a year of work. The young pharmacist took his time to consider it and asked to try the syrup, but something unexpected happened. The doctor asked to step out through the back door of the pharmacy as he had left the syrup inside an old teapot on the ground along with his horse. The doctor then returned through the back door with the teapot and handed it to Pemberton, along with a piece of paper that detailed the exact mixture of ingredients. Minutes later, the deal was sealed, and this mysterious doctor left the pharmacy, never to be seen again. Up until that point, it was a risky bet. The young pharmacist had no guarantee of recovering his investment, but he decided to take the risk, seeing the opportunity to sell the syrup in his pharmacy. Sometime later, Pemberton mixed the ingredients to make the syrup, which he named Pemberton's French wine coca, and sold it in his pharmacy, Jacobs. The syrup quickly gained popularity and began to be sold as a refreshing drink, being well received by the locals. Decades later, what started as a syrup had turned into a consolidated company that employed thousands of people around the world and also boosted the sugarcane industry. By the late 1950s, Coca-Cola was preparing for its public offering on the stock market at a price of 12 cents per share. The stock's value quickly rose, and it was then, in the 1960s, that another young investor acquired a large number of Coca-Cola shares. His name was Warren Buffett, who decades later would become one of the richest men in the world, thanks to his vision in the world of investments. Today, Coca-Cola is known worldwide. Its advertising campaigns never fail to attract attention, and its formula remains in such a secret location that after more than 130 years, no one knows exactly where it is prepared. The powder and syrup are sent to factories to be mixed, bottled in bulk, and thousands of bottles leave Coca-Cola factories every day, ready to be consumed all over the world. Let's remember how it all started. An unknown old doctor and a young entrepreneurial pharmacist in 1886. Oftentimes, the best opportunities in life arrive unexpectedly, through the back door, just as they did for young Pemberton. Without any guarantees, he invested his entire year's savings into a recipe that would later change the world. The old doctor's name remains a mystery, but his legacy lives on in every bottle of Coca-Cola.
This is the story of a kid who grew up in the United States back in the 60s. He couldn't read, and his classmates teased him. Instead of reading, he preferred running around with an 8mm camera, shooting homemade movies of his toy train, which he showed to his friends for a small fee. He left school in his second year, but when his parents convinced him to return, he was mistakenly placed in a learning disabled class. He only lasted a month, and it wasn't until his family moved to another town that he found a more suitable high school, where he eventually graduated. After being rejected from a traditional film school, the kid enrolled in English at California State College at Long Beach. However, in 1965, his life took an unexpected turn. During a visit to Universal Studios, he met Chuck Silvers, an executive in the editorial department. Silvers liked the young filmmaker and invited him back to visit sometime. The next day, with no job or security clearance, the young man, dressed in a dark suit and tie, and carrying his father's briefcase with nothing inside but a sandwich and candy bars, walked confidently up to the guard at the gate of Universal and gave him a casual wave. The guard waved back, and he was in. For the entire summer, he would later recall, "I dressed in my suit and hung out with the directors and writers, including Silvers, who knew that I wasn't a studio employee, but amusingly ignored the deception. I even found an unused office and claimed it as my own. Then I bought some plastic plaques and put my name on the building directory." Steven Spielberg, Room 23C. 10 years later, at the age of 27, he directed Jaws, which became the highest-grossing movie of all time at that point, earning $470 million. Dozens of films and awards followed, because Steven Spielberg knew something that his teachers and classmates didn't. Talent is in the eyes of the filmmaker.
Y esto ha sido todo por hoy. Si te ha gustado la metodología, te invito a compartir el contenido y a dejar tu like. Nos vemos en el próximo video.